Welcome along to Silverstone, everybody, or if you're with us earlier, welcome back to Silverstone. We've got our second race and our final race of the weekend coming up for you for the Porsche Club Motorsport Championship with Pirelli, which for this weekend also includes the grid of the Boxster Cup cars here at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Now, this grid is based on the second fastest times that were set in qualifying this morning. So we have the main Porsche Club Motorsport class, we have the AM class, and we have the Boxster class all there, but they all have their own separate grids. So the main club class go off first, those are ones with the yellow windscreen headers. Then there'll be a two-row gap before we see the cars in the AM category with the black windscreen headers go off, and then there's another further two-row gap before we see the car with the white Porsche windscreen headers go off, and those are all of the cars competing in the Boxster Cup. There's one car that's not on the grid. An amended grid was issued, and that is because Oliver Chatham, who was involved in an incident in race 1, he could not get the car repaired in time for race number 2, so he is not out. And we also had an amendment to the grid which also sees that number 3, Matthew Shears, was given a 5-place grid penalty for causing a collision in the race earlier on today, so he has been bumped five further places down the grid than otherwise he would have been. So green flag is about to be waved and the cars are heading off on their final formation lap in what are beautiful sunny conditions here at Silverstone, with the cars almost silhouetted by the sun with that beautiful glint off the highly polished cars. And what are we? We're only about 5 days away from getting a solar eclipse, aren't we, in the UK? What is it, Wednesday next week, is it? Tuesday next week we get the solar eclipse, so maybe the first time we won't have seen sun in this country for the best part of 6 weeks, because we really have had a great summer, and you can see how yellow the grass looks. So let's guide you through the grid. Mark McAleer lines up on pole position with Ed Hayes alongside. Row 2 of the grid is Steve Wood and race 1 winner Jake McAleer. Row 3 of the grid is Chris Dyer and Paul Simpson, and it's Jim Bryan that has Stuart Marsden for company on row number 4. Row number 5, on the inside of that 5th row of the grid, it is Pete Morris, and then it will be Charlie Dye with Julian Morris and Paul Seagrave next up. Then it's Andreas Giorgio and Julian Dye. Faye Noble Evans has got Barrington Darcy for company, who was going well in the AM category in the race earlier on today. And then, as we head onto the next row of the grid, it is Ian Hill and Jessica Wilkinson ahead of Tim Harrington and Brian Richardson on row number 10. The 11th row of the grid is Alan Williams and Rob Young, before we get to row 12, and that's where we see the Boxsters, Ethan Hall and Luca Maserati. Ethan Hall was the winner of the Boxster class earlier on today. The 13th row of the grid is Brendan Hafner and David Watt, ahead of Adam Warner and Stuart Warner, who both line up on row number 14 of the grid. 15th row of the grid sees Tony Jones and Eric Bridges, and it's Tony Levy and Craig Horvath that are there on row number 16. The 17th row of the grid is Louis Pont and Tony Houston, ahead of Matthew Shears and Kuba Wozniak, who had mechanical issues earlier on today, and that's why he starts further down through the order. Nick Crabtree and Stephen Cartwright, and off the back of the grid is Brooklyn Powell, who was down on power in qualifying, and they traced it down to some dirt in the fuel, I think it was, in the end. So he made a brilliant drive back through the order earlier on today, and ultimately finished well and truly up through the class. He was 4th in class, having started way down through the order. So let's see what he might be able to do in this particular one. So we've got these sort of 3 races that we need to follow. We'll try and pick out some action from each one of them and our respective class leaders as well. But for Mark McAleer, he'll be hoping that he can grab the win, his son having claimed the race win earlier on today. Both cars are painted pretty much identically, so they're both black and purple and blue, whether it be number 14 Mark McAleer or number 1 Jake McAleer. About the only way to tell them apart is Mark McAleer's car has the clear headlamps, Jake McAleer's car black headlamps, so they're covered over in his. That's about the only way you can tell those 2 cars apart, otherwise they are pretty much identical. So if you can see the front of the car, you've got a good idea. If you can see the side of it or the back of it, you're pretty stuffed as to which one is which. So there we can see, the clear headlamps on Mark McAleer's car as he lines up there on pole position, which bizarrely is on the outside line on the run to the first corner. But the reason it's on the outside line is because that is the usual racing line. So that's the cleaner side of the circuit, and that's why pole position here at Silverstone is on that side of the track, because that's the regular line that you would take on the run up towards Cops Corner. So he has got the light blue and red and black car of Ed Hayes alongside him, and then row 2 of the grid, Steve Wood, white and light green and blue, alongside Chris Dyer, who is at the wheel of his Cayman, and that is red and black in the hands of the former champion. So It's going to take a while just to get everybody into position, because it's sort of 6 rows for the club category, it's another 6 rows for the AM category, and then it's the best part of something like 9 rows of Boxsters then to try and sort out. And only once we've got everybody into position, when we see the green flag waved by the marshal at the very tail end of the field, and it stretches right the way round through Woodcut Corner towards Luffield, this field. And then once that is done, there we go, we can see just edging up onto their correct positions on the grid the cars at the tail end, and then we should be good to go. Now, one car now, is that in the wrong position? That's the problem, because everybody, there we go, right, okay, we've got ourselves sorted. Everybody's now edged up to where they need to be. Brooklyn Howell coming into position in the yellow and light blue car off the tail end of the order. He's got a lot of cars to overtake if he wants to finish 4th in class, even more if he wants to finish on the podium, but he did a brilliant job earlier on today, so watch out for number 15. Should make progress through the Boxster category at least. 5 seconds on the clock. 5 seconds on the board held up, 25 minutes on the clock. Red light's about to come on, and as they do, the revs begin to rise, and as the lights go out, which they do, quite a long hold, they get going. Mark McAleer looking to try and get the jump on Ed Hayes, and the two of them looking as though as they head up towards Copse Corner, they are still going to be side by side. Mike McAleer around the outside might have a better run coming out of the corner, but we'll have to wait and see. Looks so everybody is safely through that first corner, and it is going to be Ed Hayes that has picked up the lead of the race by the look of things. So Mark McAleer down into 2nd position at this stage. Ed Hayes leads, and who's there in 3rd? It's Jake McAleer that's there in 3rd position. Steve Wood is down into 4th place. Chris Dyer is there in 5th position, and it looks as though that's Paul Simpson that's there in 6th place. So Ed Hayes has converted 2nd place to the race lead, and now is Jake McAleer going through and ahead of his father. He might move up to 2nd place here. They are going to change. So Jake McAleer moves up into 2nd place, and down to 3rd goes his father, Mark McAleer. He will try and hang on to 3rd place and try and fight back. Probably won't be as quite aggressive trying to overtake his son, but given any opportunity, he'll try and wiggle his way past, because we've seen these two race very well together and very hard in previous seasons. So out of Club Corner and over the start and finish line. Try and pick up on what's going on in the AM category as well towards the end of this lap. Ed Hayes leading the way, and there are problems, I'm afraid, and that's Tim Harrington, who I think might have had a problem. And is he going to pull the car off on the exit of Club? I think he might be doing that. Looks more like retirement than a spin and recovery, possibly. There's the number 55 Cayman in the hands of... Oh, right, and there's Pete Morris. So Pete Morris, who had braking problems in qualifying and didn't take part in the first race. Pete Morris does not make many mistakes. Now, he's in the gravel. Is that a mistake, or is that a braking problem still causing the Strasser 997 a problem? And that is a big issue for that car being stranded there. Hopefully, it can be dealt with under local yellows. If not, it would require a safety car. We'll wait and see. For the moment, the race continues with Ed Hayes leading the way, but under pressure from the race 1 winner, Jake McAleer. So the slightly more powerful but slightly heavier 997 trying to hunt down the Cayman. And as they head over the start-finish line, 997 trying to draw itself alongside. Say it might be having more power, but it's heavier, so the power-to-weight ratios are pretty much identical, whether it be a Cayman, a 997 or a 996. We'll see all 3 of those running in the club category. Leading the AM category is going to be Charlie Dye in the number 96 car in the early stages. That's the gold car with the white flashes that's just gone through shot. So he's there in 10th position, and leading the Boxster Cup is that car there with the blue and the pink flashes to it, which is going to be Ethan Hall. And the one good thing, he's got a couple now of AM category cars between himself and the 2nd car in the Boxster Cup, so that will please him at this stage. Leaders are up towards Stowe Corner. Remember, there'll be localised yellows on the run down in towards the Vale and Club, because there's no overtaking due to the stricken car of Pete Morris, and the marshals are there standing at the edge of the car but behind it to make sure they are at least covered by something should anybody else have a problem under braking. But all of the drivers obeying and slowing down through that section, which they need to. So Ed Hayes now down into 2nd position. Jake McAleer leading the way. Also Steve Wood and Mark McAleer have had the shuffle. So Steve Wood in the 997. He's got Mark McAleer behind him, and then Chris Dyer just off that. So Mark McAleer, a multiple former class champion, Chris Dyer, a former champion. Steve Wood back for another go in Porsches, having briefly raced in British GT in all things, a Volkswagen Golf. Steve Wood, also seen him race Ford Mustangs and things in the past as well, but is a Porsche specialist under pressure from the 997 that sits behind. But Mark McAleer was not quite close enough. Last time over the start-finish line, Jake McAleer was just 84 thousandths of a second adrift of Ed Hayes. This time through, the gap has stretched, because not only has Jake McAleer taken the lead of the race, he's probably going to post the fastest lap. Yes, he does, a 2 minute 20.0, but he's a second up the road now from Ed Hayes. So the Park Motorsport car just slipping away to a degree. Leader of the AM category is still going to be number 96, which is Charlie Dye, who's running in 10th position over the start-finish line. And he leads that by about a second and a half from Andreas Giorgio, who's second in AM, and third in AM is going to be the number 58 car of Ian Hall, the man from New Zealand to race with us this weekend. Leading the Boxster category is still 25 Ethan Hall, from 46 Luca Maserati, from number 13 Brendan Hafner. Those are the top three in the Boxster category. We concentrate for the moment on those running at the sharp end of club, and in particular the battle for third, fourth and fifth between Steve Wood, Mark McAleer, and then the red and black car at the tail end of this little trio, which is Chris Dyer. So in towards the yellow flag zone, Pete Morris's car almost out of harm's way. That should be clear probably by next time through. Now here is Andreas Giorgio. He is second in the class at the moment, but look behind him. Right behind him is going to be the car of Ian Hall, and then Ian Hall has got Barrington Darcy right behind that. Ian Hall's car, which lost its roof earlier on. It's only a plastic or fiberglass roof on these particular racing Porsches, and he had a spin and the roof blocked off, so he's allowed to race open-topped for this one. So that's a good fight for second, third and fourth in AM, 11th, 12th and 13th overall. On to the Wellington Straight goes a leading pair, with then that trio sitting behind. Mark McAleer almost outbraked himself going in towards Village last time through, but the number 14 car sort of gathered up the moment and is now trying to attack the 77, the white and the green and the blue machine in the hands of Steve Wood. So it's 997 from Cayman, from 996 from 997 from Canaan at the moment in terms of the models that are represented. So through and over the start finish line now go. 3 laps completed. Jake McAleer, the reigning champion, leading the way. As I said earlier on today, he claimed another win in what was round 9 of the championship. He claimed his 8th win of the year so far. He could be on to back it up with another one here. So here's this battle for second, third and fourth in Boxster. Albeit I say that, is that Ethan Hall that's now behind them all? It looks like his car, the number 25. So as they come over the start-finish line, no, yeah, Ethan Hall is behind him. He's leading the Boxster class, but it's for second, third and fourth in the AM class that are just ahead of him, so that's why. So it is Andreas Giorgio in the silver and orange number 88, under pressure now from Barrington Darcy, and dropping to the tail end of that little order is Ian Hill. He's got the Boxster class leader right behind him, Ethan Hall, the number 25 car. So that's a good little fight. 4 Boxsters all fighting away, 3 of them in the AM class, 1 of them in the Boxster category. And we've also now had a change at the front of the order, because Barrington Darcy's gone to second in AM at the moment. You can tell the difference. Look at the black windscreen headers on the first 3 Boxsters, white windscreen header on the second of the final of those 3 Boxsters, indicating that the white windscreen header is a car that's in the Boxster Cup and not in the Porsche AM Championship. They used to be called Class 1, Class 2, but now it's Club and AM. And there's contact there. That is Andreas Giorgio coming together with Ian Hall, I think, there. And that was a bit of a dint in the side of Andreas Giorgio's car there, as Ian Hall probably just either missed his braking point or it got a bit tight as Andreas Giorgio turned in. Real look of damage to the front of Ian Hall's car, but Andreas Giorgio couldn't really see the damage, but his car was struggling to get going again afterwards, so maybe just in the process of trying to restart the engine on the car, but it certainly lost him places. Now, further down through the order, you can see the squabbles that are going on amongst the Boxster Cup. There's Tony Levy having a great little fight with Toby Hewson. As those two cars head over the start-finish line, they are fighting away. Tony Levy was in 26th position, I think. You can see just how busy it is out there, and every time you look, cars change position, because there's Tony Jones. Well, he was in 30th position at the end of the last lap. And he's now attacking number 42, which is of Alan Williams. So that's a Boxster class car going past one of the AM class machines. And elsewhere in the order, that's Matthew Shears, who was given the 5-place grid drop. Busy fighting away with Toby Hewson. So down towards the braking area for Brooklands Corner. Toby Hewson hanging on to his position, which is going to be outside of the top 30 at this stage because there are so many cars on the grid. There were 49 grid positions, but of course some of those were taken up by the gaps from one row to the next in reality, so they get the 2-row gap from Club to AM and then from AM to Boxster. But it was the best part of 42 cars on the grid. I mean, you can see all the way down through the order that there are fights to be had. So there is Craig Horvath. He's there in 28th position. Tony Levy's right behind him in 29th. In 30th is Toby Hewson, and trying to play catch-up is the next car behind. Back to the AM category. Now this is going to be higher up through the order, and that will be the number 42 car, which is Alan Williams. He's got his AM car amongst the Boxsters at this stage, so that's why he's got his hands rather full. It arguably is a quicker car. Right, battle for the lead is on, and that is because Ed Hayes set the fastest lap of the race last time through. He was 0.3 of a second quicker than the race leader, 2 minutes 19.476, and this time Ed Hayes goes even quicker, 2 minutes 19.255 for the leader. For the car in second place, trying to hunt down the leader, so the gap is just 0.5, and that is Matthew Shears, I'm afraid, that is off, and he is off at the top of the Hanger Straight, so he must have pulled the car off there to the left-hand side of the circuit, so that is localised yellow flags there, and Ed Hayes is attacking for the lead of the race here. Jake McAleer won the race earlier on today from Ed Hayes in second place. They've got traffic to deal with as well before too much longer, which is going to be Stephen Cartwright's car. Where are they going to meet Stephen Cartwright? Just into the braking zone for Stowe Corner. You see Stephen looking in his mirrors, trying to work out, right, where do I need to be? That might compromise the front two round through Stowe, because of course there's the yellow flags and they can't overtake anyway, so they've got to lift off until they reach the green flags, and now they can get on with it again. So that was sensible driving and good driving, I've got to say, from Jake McAleer and Ed Hayes. They met the back marker in the wrong place just as they got to the yellow flag zone. They couldn't overtake, they had to slow their pace. As they've done that, all of a sudden Steve Wood is back on them, because he didn't have a traffic ahead of him travelling slower that he had to deal with, so that has really spiced it up. 5 cars now for the lead of the race. Jake McAleer leads, Ed Hayes leads, Steve Wood from Mark McAleer, and then the car of Chris Dyer, and that's all because of that yellow flag zone there, because of Matt Shears parked at the side of the circuit just as the back marker got to it. So did the leaders get to the back marker, they couldn't overtake. But I've got to say, exemplary driving standards from everybody to see the yellow flags, not try and do anything silly through them, purposely back off and not be able to overtake. Absolutely complied with Motorsport UK regulations there. You cannot overtake in a yellow flag zone. And for poor old Jake McAleer and Ed Hayes, that must be hugely frustrating, because they'd built a little bit of a gap to Steve Wood, and now Steve Wood is right with them, attacking. So it's still a 9.97 from a Cayman from a 9.96, the top three. And as they head round through Lovefield, there's more traffic up the road that they're going to have to deal with before too much longer. The thing I ought to say again, I said that Brooklyn Howell would make some progress from the very back of the grid after his problems in qualifying. Well, he finished 4th in the Boxster class earlier on from the back of the grid. Well, he's 5th in the Boxster class now, actually, and 21st place overall. So he's made excellent progress in the number 15 car, which is largely yellow and light blue. So 2 brilliant drives from him for a driver that's very much in his first season of racing. And has had some good results so far this year, including 1 overall podium. Jake McAleer is trying to resume normal service here, and he's just building a very small advantage again over Ed Hayes in second place, who just can't shake away then the 4 cars that are behind him, the first of which is the white car with its light green flashes of Steve Wood, the next of which is Mark McAleer, then the largely black and red car in the hands of Chris Dyer, the Straza prepared machine, up towards the braking area for Stowe Corner with 10 minutes to go, so we're past the halfway point now. 6 laps already completed, and Chris Dyer, I thought in the background, was king of a move there on 4th place for Mark McAleer, but he wasn't close enough as they came down the Vale and towards the braking area for Club Corner. But Steve Wood might get an overlap here. No, can't quite squeeze the 9.96 up the inside of the Cayman. And of course, if he tries something and it doesn't work, Mark McAleer in 4th place is poised and ready to pounce at the wheel of his 9.97. So they head round through Farm, Abbey I should say, then up towards the left-hand kick-up Farm before into the heavy braking area at Village Corner. And they're still all locked together in the same positions. All to say, still leading Am is number 96. Chris Hayes here might be able to pull a move here because Mark McAleer didn't exactly get the loop as he wanted to, and the Cayman is going to go through. Mark McAleer all over the grass, all over the old tarmac, back onto the circuit again, loses a huge chunk of time and drops to 4th place as a result of that. So Jake McAleer, his son, still leading the way at this stage, and is slowly just edging away from Ed Hayes in second place. Ed Hayes has still got the fastest lap of the race, 2:26.255. And just to give you an indication, you know when they were overtaking that back marker and had to ease off, that lap was at 2:26. It was 7 seconds slower because of the yellow flag zone and the back marker. Just goes to show how much time they had to yield, not how much time they lost, but how much time they had to yield under those conditions with the yellow flags and catching the back marker at the wrong point. So Steve Wood still trying to do something to unlock the door on Ed Hayes, who is pushing hard at the wheel of the Cayman. But of course, now that this squabble for 2nd and 3rd is starting to hot up, it's just allowing our race leader Jake McAleer to edge ever more away. 1.4 seconds was the gap. That is 9/10ths quicker than the cars behind were doing last time through. Chris Dyer, having taken 4th place away from Mark McAleer on the previous lap, now finds himself under pressure. The first of the time penalties for track limits now comes in as well. I'm afraid to say that's Paul Seagrave, number 45, who's running in 14th position and 10th in the club class. He's picked up a 5-second penalty for track limits. I think he's the first of the drivers to do so. So out of club, and that is all over the grass. Ed Hayes, is that Ed Hayes? No, it can't be. Yes, it is Ed Hayes, all over the grass and the gravel trap. So Ed Hayes has lost a chunk of time and has lost 2nd position now. That was because they were probably trying to weave their way through and past back markers. Maybe just made a wrong decision now. We'd also got Steve Wood trying to carve his way through and past him, but maybe we might be able to get a replay of exactly what happened there, because Ed Hayes took a wild ride through the gravel and he's now dropped behind Mark McAleer at the wheel of the light blue, black and red number 7 Porsche Cayman. So it's 2 for the lead of the race. Jake McAleer has been dominant so far this season. The only other driver to have won a race is Ed Hayes. Steve Wood would like to try and correct that if he can, after a poor second race at Alton Park, and then I don't think we saw Steve out at Anglesey. His best result of the season so far is a second. He's had a couple of thirds as well, but a win would go down well for him. And I think this is probably his local track as well, Steve, in terms of those that we visit this year, with Donington, Snetterton, Alton, Anglesey. Checkered flag has come out. Jake McAleer claims the win from Steve Wood in second place, Chris Dyer in third, Mark McAleer in fourth, Ed Hayes in fifth, and sixth coming through will be Paul Simpson. So despite Steve Wood throwing everything at it through the final few corners, he couldn't quite get there, and Jake McAleer picks up another win in the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli. The AM category win should go the way of Barrington Darcy. It was being led for a good period of time by Charlie Dye, but there are only 35 seconds between them at the start of this lap. So that's the 27 and the 96 that should be coming through the final couple of corners any second now. Barrington Darcy's car is the silver car with the Martini-esque stripe down the centre of it, and he does not claim the win, because Charlie Dye pips him in the end by 0.2 of a second to finish in 10th place and claim the win in AM from Barrington Darcy in 11th place. And 12th place will go the win of the Boxster category winner, which will be Ethan Hall. So he scoops up the final place inside the top 12, and the win in the Boxster category. Second in Boxster will go the way of Luca Maserati, and Brendan Hafner will pick up third in Boxster, which I think is the same order that they were in earlier on. We have had a 5-second penalty come in for just one single car, and that is Paul Seagrave, who I think was running in 12th but drops to 15th as a result. And there is our category class winner. So there is Charlie Dye, who by just 0.2 of a second beat Barrington Darcy. They were having a great fight out on circuit, and say Barrington, the start of the final lap was 27 thousandths of a second ahead at the start of the last lap, but 0.2 of a second ahead by the end of it was Charlie Dye, and that will please him because he was 5th, I think, in the category earlier on today. The win did go the way, first race today at Barrington Darcy, and it's 2 out of 2 also in the Boxster Cup for number 25, Ethan Hall. He'll be very pleased with that because he's another driver that's been pretty dominant in his class so far this year. A couple more cars potentially just to take the checkered flag. Kuba Wozniak, who had problems in the first race, is still out on circuit. I think we're still awaiting to take the checkered flag. And also number 66, Julian Dye, still as yet to take the checkered flag, but whether they have had problems on the final lap and haven't quite made it through, we shall have to wait and see. And the other car I was interested in, what about the progress of Brooklyn Howell? Where did he end up in the end? And he must have had a problem because his car is not showing inside the top 30, I'm afraid. So Jake McAleer will be very pleased indeed with that one. Steve Wood in second position, and Chris Dyer in third. And for Jake McAleer, as we say, there's only one race he has not won so far this year, so for the reigning champion, he has very much got a stranglehold on the 2026 championship, and is at the moment the man to be beaten, really. Only one driver all year so far has beaten him, and that is Ed Hayes, who on this occasion came through to finish in 5th following his gravelly moment down there at Club Corner. So drivers waving and receiving the appreciation of the marshals and the fans as they drive round. Let's confirm some results. Jake McAleer claims the win by 0.3 of a second from Steve Wood in second place, and Chris Dyer was there in third. Mark McAleer was 4th with Ed Hayes in 5th position. Paul Simpson was in 6th ahead of Stuart Marsden, followed by Jim Bryan and then Julian Morris. Chris Dye was next, Charlie Dye was next up, who claimed the win in his class with Barrington Darcy finishing in 11th place, and Ethan Hall was the first of the Boxster class cars home in 12th position. Then it was Ian Hill from Luca Maserati, Paul Seagrave, Brendan Hafner, Faye Noble-Evans, Jess Wilkinson, followed them by in 19th position. That was how far Brooklyn Howell got in the end, up to 19th position. And 20th was going to be Warner. Then it was Watt from Jones, Stuart Warner, followed by then the car of Levy, Williams. Craig Horvers was there in 26th position with Louis Pons next up, and then Tony Hewson from Cuba Wozniak, and then the second of the Dye family finishing next up in 30th position. Eric Bridges was in 31st place ahead of Nick Crabtree, and then Stephen Cartwright, and then towards the tail end of the order we've got the retirements, the likes of Matthew Shears we saw retired down at the top part of the circuit up at Stowe Corner. That brought about that yellow flag just as the back markers got there and the race leader, so that made it quite interesting. And he was one of what were just a few retirements, because of course we lost Pete Morris early on. Replay of the race, let's have a quick look. The cars charged their way up towards Cobbs Corner for the first time, with Ed Hayes looking for the lead of the race. There was early problems for Tim Harrington though, whose car retired, and also Pete Morris, who disappeared into the gravel trap, but he had been suffering from brake problems. Steve Wood was under a whole host of pressure with the likes of Mark McAleer and Chris Dyer trying to squabble with him, and our Boxster class leader Ethan Hall was mixing it amongst the amateur categories. There was a great fight going on for the lead of the race, but of course they met a back marker just at the yellow flag zone. They all had to slow, and then there were problems just a few corners later as Ed Hayes skittered off into the gravel trap, but did rejoin down at Club. Checkered flag comes out, and it would be Jake McAleer that was going to claim the win. So there we go, that is our final race this weekend for the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli, featuring the Boxster Cup. But do join us for more action, because the cars will be back out on circuit on the 26th of September, where they go back to where the championship got underway, Donington Park and the Grand Prix circuit. So join us for those two races. Until then, we'll say goodbye.